This interview of Ram Dass was made on October 18, 1975, on the New Dimensions program of KQED FM in San Francisco. The program was conducted by Michael Toms and Will Noffke.
Family.
Such a joyous occasion. It really, we've all grown over the years. As you mentioned last night, it's been so many years now.
Yeah.
I guess one of the first times in San Francisco was, what, in '69? I guess there was some times that you had visited before that.
Speaking in San Francisco?
I mean, no, as Ram Dass.
Oh, as Ram Dass. Oh. Well, that had to be after '68. I don't know when that was. '69, I guess.
Remember Unitarian. He sort of reactivated me at that time.
That was nice at Unitarian Church.
Yeah,
I like that.
Beautiful.
I wish I could use that now. It's just not big enough.
It's a beautiful environment. Last night was so good. I know Michael had some questions to expand on.
Hello, everybody, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm Ram Dass, and Krishna Das is here, too. The Das brothers. Go ahead, Michael.
I had some questions.
I thought you had said that you wanted to expand on some of the things that were said last night.
I
know I did, since we've been doing a program with women tonight.
I thought it was interesting coming in the front door, though there was a long line of people waiting to buy tickets, and there was a long line of people coming through the front door, and there was Ram Dass standing there by the front door. And it was interesting to see people come through the front door and watch what was happening. Many people didn't notice that he was standing there, and some did. And it was just interesting to look at their faces as that happened.
The double takes were interesting.
Yeah. A guy outside asked me, he said, "Gee, you look familiar." He stood in line for a ticket. It's far out because I know, I bet I know 50-60% of that audience from other contexts, from one place or another through our lives. And it really is a chance to just have that moment of contact with each person. I really like that, being at the door, because a personal contact with a human being is very different from these group processes, even though we do get very within our own heads together. I still really like to just have 1 second with each person.
It was interesting. Someone commented last night that the group seemed older. And I said, well, we're all getting older. But also straighter. Are we getting straighter, too?
I think we're getting less attached to external forms.
Images.
Of our separateness. And we're coming to a level now where our the faith in the fact that something has truly happened to us is deep enough so that we don't need to prove it or show it or state it, And I don't feel any longer the need for all of my beads and Indian clothes, which I used to need, really. I used to need to make my statement.
If you remember the last time you were with us, Laura Huxley had just cut your hair.
My beard.
In the desert, I think.
My beard, yeah.
She cut some of it.
Right.
Part of the transition.
There are always women everywhere ready to cut.
We've been doing a
You've
program.
You've been doing a woman show,
yes.
And I should say that my 2 present teachers on the physical plane are both women, and that my path is actually the lineage that I pursue involves the love and honoring and opening to the universe as the mother, and it's very much a very intense feeding process, feeding from the mother, and it's opened me very much to that kind of energy, and it's interesting because each being on their way to God becomes both the child that feeds from the mother and the bride of God, so that the soul has no maleness or femaleness, which is interesting because I'm now in a business where all the preoccupation with manness and womanness just isn't part of that anymore. It's just not.
It was interesting tonight to watch the program evolve. It was good to listen for a change, by the way. And
yeah, I found myself being just terribly nervous. It was a different experience, just like talking about being a fish out of water. It felt
being on
like
the
that.
other side of the glass for a change. No, but it evolved in a way that the fact that women were doing it was forgotten. We got down to details.
Yeah, that's good.
That we all share. That probably was the
Well,
most rewarding.
It was a high-powered group of women, too.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Many of them, from days past.
Days past, yeah.
I wonder if you'd share something about your teachers with us. A great many people that are listening were there last night and probably have heard some of the information, but a great many other people were interested.
Well, without doing the whole story, since I did it in detail last night, and that tape I'm sure will appear somewhere around here sooner or later. The process of the kind of teachings that I'm involved in now are tantric in the sense that, in two senses. One, in the way in which daily life experiences are used as vehicles for purification. That is, rather than mantra or traditional chanting, things like that, it's the daily life interaction among the satsang and between the satsang and the teacher that is the grist for the mill. And often, for example, I might be seeing somebody who is needing help from me, and I'm in the middle of talking to them, and the phone will ring, it'll be the teacher. And the teacher will then keep me on the phone for 30, 40 minutes, and I have to deal with all of the social, psychological aspects of what it's like for that other person. And the teacher is perfectly aware of what's going on in the other person's consciousness, and is seeing, would never allow me to be taught at the expense of the other person. So is very aware of the way that other person is working with their experiences as it's going along. But I'm working with my sort of frustration, irritation, because I was in the middle of doing something, but after all, here is the teaching. And I can't quite program when I get the teaching and in what packages I get it in. It's often just as I'm going to sleep at night, or just as I'd like to go to the bathroom, or something like that. And it goes on, and I have to deal with all of my conflicting motives all the time. And it's always done, the best teachings occur under tension, where, for example, now I'm in California, and I'm being called by my teacher, Collect from New York, and she'll talk for an hour and a half, and I have to deal with my Jewish middle-class upbringing, which is very delicious to watch, because I know that if she had called at 2 minutes later, the rate would have been half as much. But how much is God worth? And what's a fair price? And it takes you through an incredible number of trips. This is beautiful. I mean, this is.
Well, I think the whole idea of teaching coming by telephone.
Oh, I think it's delicious. I have spent as much as sometimes 15 hours a day on the phone.
Oh, wow.
And that's how it comes via telephone.
I'd say for me about a good 50% of it comes by phone. Yes. And the rest comes in person. And just the idea that I'm ending up living in Manhattan and going to see this very, very high being in a suburb of Manhattan for experiences that by every rule of the game that I know should be happening in caves in the Himalayas where you trek through the snowy, passes and are led there by old llamas and so on, and here we are.
You're not living in Manhattan just to keep your phone bill down.
No, I'm placed. I'm told where to live. And I am told what I eat, when I sleep, what clothes I wear, what time I'm to be everywhere. If I'm told to, if I leave the teacher's house at, say, 1 in the afternoon, and I'm to be home at 2:30, at 2:30, as I walk into the house, the phone will ring, and I'll start again. I mean, there's no space at all in the game, for me anyway, none whatsoever.
How about
and it's taken my ego on quite a few trips, as you can imagine, because I'm used to, after all, I have my own game going, if you will, that I've developed over the years of being Ram Dass, and I've got like 100 letters a week to answer, and lots of people who want to see me, and I'm busy being somebody on some level or other, but that doesn't seem totally relevant in this game, and it's fun to be somebody in between being nobody and fit it all in together and really put the somebodyness into perspective by being a student primarily and seeing all of my somebodyness as part of my teaching. Excuse me.
Oh, hearing you talk last night about the telephone calls, and then hearing you again tonight about telephone calls, and I was what I got last night and experiencing, I was hearing you talk about your experience of like in the bathtub, when you're talking about being in the bathtub, and here comes the phone again.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this poor teacher who's calling you on the phone. How is she standing up to this?
She has 4 telephones and is keeping a few other people, as well as me, completely off guard all the time, out of control, and does it beautifully because she has consciousness, so she knows what each of us is doing at every moment. So she will always call just as I've gone to the refrigerator and opened it and have just the plan of what I'm about to eat, and I'm just reaching for it, the phone will ring. Right? And that demands full attention, because if I pick up the phone and my consciousness isn't right there fully. See, it's a special telephone. Each of us has to have a special telephone just for her. And you pick it up, and if you're not conscious fully right there, within the first word, she'll hang up. That's the end of the teaching. You just blew the teaching. It's very tough. I mean, it's very exquisite essence, control, if you will. But that's because you're asking for the fire to be hot. You really want to get done. And when you want to ferret out and root out those little crevices of ego, they're very subtle, and it takes, because we all learn how to play like we don't have these things we want to hold on to.
I was still stuck back there with her being a housewife and having a family and 4 kids and a husband and all of that. And, I was just wondering how she must be an amazing individual to be carrying all of that on at one time.
It's quite unusual because her children have had to get used to finding her in samadhi and more or less understanding it. It's pretty much kept from her husband. There's a kind of a protective veil around the whole situation. But in the hours when he comes home,
you gotta keep 4 telephones away from your husband.
Well, every now and then he gets irritated and he rips them all out of the wall. Otherwise, they're pretty good. But she has a little room of her own, which is her shrine room, and that's where she hangs out. The phones are all set up in there.
There's an element of absurdity about the whole thing.
The whole thing is a cosmic joke. But then, after all, Maharaji was this fat man in a blanket sitting on a wooden table, and in the history of spiritual teachers like a Gurdjieff or the Naropa, Tilopa, Marpa, that whole sequence, there was always that kind of cosmic humor. In the Zen tradition, there's the same thing with sadhaks. There's always been that kind of tongue-in-cheek quality about the teaching, which makes it less... But the minute you take it as a joke, it becomes deadly serious. And the minute you take it deadly serious, it becomes a joke. I mean, it's done to liberate you, after all, not to entrap you in this kind of heavy... Less than high teachings are always kind of serious. We have important work to do. And the teachers all look like teachers.
Not like very attractive housewives.
Because she, she'll drive down the street in her Cadillac Eldorado, And I think here comes the the Divine Mother held on. It's a hard one, for my consciousness to make.
No
Everything in my
sorries.
alternate culture. Why isn't she driving a Volkswagen?
The godmother.
The godmother, yeah.
Can you share any of her background, if it's relevant, of how she came to this place?
Yeah, I think that's public knowledge. She.
Maybe she'll call us tonight.
The number is 864-2051.
No, unfortunately, it's too late there. This is the time when she's deep in samadhi. But she's here. Don't worry about it. She was always a very pure being. I mean, all of her life, and in a kind of a purity that is characteristic of, say, Billy Budd or James Dean in East of Eden. You know that quality of that kind of purity that it's innocence, a certain kind of innocence. And at the same moment, she was a very tough gal, very tough, was out selling. She married at 15. She was out selling fruit with her husband on the street, They had no money, And been a very independent woman all her life. Very strong appetites, very powerful, a lot of Shakti. And part of her story was that she went to a dieting salon, and they told her about a breath she could use that would get her thin. It was called a Yogi Breath, and it was alternate breathing through her nostrils. And she went home and she got into her bathtub after her husband had gone to sleep. And because she did everything excessively, she did the breath for about 5.5 hours. And whether it was the first or second night, I don't know, but suddenly there was a man sitting on her toilet seat who, since she had no experience with any of this at all, she freaked completely and grabbed a towel and put it over herself and said, "Get the hell out of here or I'll tell my husband." And of course, it was somebody her husband wouldn't see because she had just gone into another plane, and the being who had come turned out to be Swami Nityananda, who was a very, very great saint in India, who was the guru of Swami Muktananda, who is here now. And
might add, a very heavy gentleman.
Huh?
A very heavy gentleman.
Very, very heavy gentleman, yes. Heavy in many ways. And Nityananda started to bring her to realization. And then he sent her to a woman in New York City who's a very, very high spiritual teacher by the name of Hilda Charlton. And Hilda just touched her, and that's when she went into her deep samadhi for the first time. And she knew nothing about any of this. She had no
background
training.
at all.
No, nothing. She loved Christ. She knew that. And she was... And a number of times in her life, I think she'd had experiences where people had felt a religious experience from being near her. And immediately after that, she started to be sort of deluged with priests who really wanted to spend time with her and who were beginning to experience visions of Christ and the presence of Christ through her. And then things would happen, like she would go to a bar mitzvah, because she's Jewish, and she'd go to a bar mitzvah, and the rabbis would be drawn to her, and she would open the Torah and lecture to them about the scrolls, from the scrolls. And she would, people started calling her from Israel and from India, and scholars started to ask her questions because she could go into these planes of consciousness where all the stuff was available to her. And she played for a long time, and then she began to, as her consciousness kept, her awareness kept growing, she started to limit her work to those beings who really wanted to go to God. And the curiosity kind of people and all started to fall away. She didn't feed that as much. And but she's extraordinary teacher,
She doesn't prescribe.
It's not a
any-
public teaching, so it's not available to people. So, and very well protected
Except by
by us.
telephone.
Yeah, not even by that.
She doesn't prescribe any particular method or as a discipline? Or?
Well, the method is really it's a very universal teaching in a certain kind of a way, in the sense that all of the great masters are honored and teachings come through from all of them, from Christ and from Buddha and from Ramakrishna and Shirdi Sai Baba and Ramana Maharshi and Nityananda and my guru Neem Karoli Baba and others like that. I'd say our work is a great deal with the awakening of Shakti or energy through pranayama, through breath, the learning to have great discipline in terms of working with energies in the chakras, the opening of the heart and the relation to the universe as the mother and the feeding from the mother through the heart, the mostly, rather than the quieting of the mind, more like contemplative kind of meditations, rather than more, not vipassana or one-pointedness, much more contemplative kind of meditation. Study of things like the Gospel of Ramakrishna, things like that. I'd call it devotional tantra, is the way I would define the thing. Is that what Krishna does? Is that also?
Tremendous emphasis on purity.
Yeah.
Of mind.
Yeah. And having to get all your scenes straight and be very clean in your game playing. Clean of body also, by the way. I mean, bath and breath and everything has to be very much together. And you have to learn how to sit and sit for long periods of time very straight. And it's very definitely out of the yogic tradition. We are all brahmachari. We're all vegetarian. We don't participate in hardly any other social activities. I mean, the ones of us that are really going the trip are really going the trip. I mean, I live in New York City, and it's absurd. In a year, I may have been to one movie. I don't even think that. I haven't looked at television. I don't listen to radio. I don't even read the New York Times anymore. About once a week, I check up to find out whether the world ended. Other than that, I don't even live in that reality at all. I drive through the streets, but it's like another, it's like a surrealistic scene for me, you know. I could be living anywhere in the universe at this moment. I could be living in India. This is exactly the same life I would be leading if I were going to the temple every day in India to be with Maharaji. And Maharaji is very much present and teaches a great deal in that scene.
You mentioned other people. How many people are actually going through this?
Actually, a very few. Very few. Because of the limitations of her lifestyle, it's all got to be done sort of very quietly and just in a little room in her basement. So it really is a very few people.
She's not into getting a call director yet.
To getting what?
A call director.
No.
10-button phone.
Yeah, I understand.
And last night, when you first brought her up, I noticed a hush fell over the audience and something of a gasp. Suddenly you were in a different place. Again, you'd shifted.
Yeah.
And you'd pulled the rug out from under people again. And one of the things you said is, don't do anything because I do it. And I found that very significant because I've watched the spiritual community follow many of the courses that you've taken in a very apparently superficial way. Although I hesitate to make that judgment. I mean, there are physical things that are identifiable. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
No, I think what you're saying, Will, is very true. I think a lot of people have taken on Ram Dass as somewhat of guru and look to Ram Dass as kind of their spiritual.
I think more be here now than me, in actuality. that Be Here Now served a function at a certain point. I mean, numerous people come up to me and say, that's my Bible, or I've been reading it for years, or I look at it like the I Ching, I check it out for things to do. And I think that that book, which I don't identify as my book, it's merely something that came through us at a certain point in time, is what is the thing that they've looked to. I think, because I haven't felt the pressure of people demanding I be a guru. I mean, I treat it very lightly when they do, but I haven't. I'm just getting to the point now where I'm considering myself a teacher now, which is even new. That's another new place, actually, a new space.
In putting forth the teachings that you're receiving? Transmitting
exactly.
Those?
So I'm taking on a very few students now, too, which is a whole new experience for me, because I've been giving the introductory lecture for so many years now. You're always giving that first lecture. You never give the second one. And after a while, I began to realize I knew more than I could ever tell anybody, and it was getting frustrating. So I started slowly to, let a few people gather and start to get an advanced group together, and that's really exciting for me.
Are you teaching a method, or are you gearing it to the individual? Because that's always seemed to be your particular teaching, was that different strokes for different folks.
Well, that is the teaching of the Be Here Now period. Yes. Now I would say that in general, about 50% of the time I'm working with the students is the game of cleaning them up, is forcing stuff out and cleaning it up, the sort of discrimination, cleaning up their game. And the other 50% of the time is bringing them closer into spiritual spaces through energy, through heart, through meditation, through study. And so it's a game of bringing them up and then getting the earth up behind them. So they keep bringing their plane of life up to the planes of consciousness they meet. And constantly, for example, you take a group of people in a meditation up and you say, you do breathing, and you're going up higher and higher, and you're getting into higher spaces and clearer spaces. And then as you take people up, then you start to say, okay, Will, what do you got now? Okay? And you're in a place where the last thing you want to do is have to talk.
Right.
See, you just want to space out. But that talking is very critical, because it helps people know how they got there, so they end up with the control of it, rather than it being something they got from you.
Is this the contemplation that you're talking about?
That awareness. Yeah, you give them a directive meditation, and then you're constantly asking for feedback from them as to where they are. So they get very good at defining their emotions, their states of consciousness, which gives them a handle on what's happening to them, and gives them a lot more power.
It's the contemplation that you're talking about. That awareness.
Yeah, you give them a directive meditation, and then you're constantly asking for feedback from them as to where they are. So they get very good at defining their emotions, their states of consciousness, which gives them a handle on what's happening to them, and gives them a lot more power in the situation. So I'd say that the classes are this kind of mixed game of working with, like some people I'll put together in a living situation in a house. And then the whole dynamics of that house situation become grist for the mill of our becoming conscious together.
So it really is, if not functioning in the world in the sense of
it's in the world, and
it's within a frame.
Absolutely, they've all got to earn a living. Right. They live right in the city. They rent their own houses. I mean, it's all that stuff. At the same moment, they have all made the commitment that their entire life is dedicated to going to God, so that everything they're doing is in relation to getting to God, so that I have total say, if you will, or total liberty. They've given me license to involve myself with their lives at every corner, every junction. So in a way, it's like a city ashram, if you will, except it doesn't have any institutional identity, and I can walk out anytime I want to, which is the only way I could do it.
This message is coming across strong and clear lately. Last week with Swami Amarjyoti, there was a discussion of listening to the conscience as the first step before you can go on to hear the inner voice, that you can't let yourself off the hook. You've got to listen, and you've got to act on it. And you can't say, well, next time, or qualify something. And
well, you can make the distinction between people who, I made it last night, I think, I'm not sure, who want God, and those who want God.
Right.
See, I'd say most of us, most of the time, want to want God. They sort of want to be aimed in the right direction, but they don't want to shake the game too much. They don't want to give up or risk. They're not ready to say, okay, you take my life and get me to God, all right? You can have it all. I don't want it. I'll do it all. Anything you say, I'll do. That's the act of surrender. And you're surrendering to somebody who doesn't want you. They just want you liberated, really. You know, and that's the way you've got to trust intuitively. Like, I realized I was ready to be a teacher when I didn't really want to see anybody anymore. See, as long as I kept wanting to collect people, I distrusted my own teaching. But now my teaching comes out of a whole different motivation. I really look at a being and I see only where they're not. I see their soul, which I love incredibly, and then I see the stuff that's keeping them from knowing who they are. And that just brings out of me my Kali nature. It brings out that sword, and I just go after it. And it's all very automatic. I function just like a computer. It really is incredible when I'm in that teaching role. In fact, I get myself into a certain space through meditation. I come into a space where there is no more Ram Dass. There's just this incredible instrument for purification.
There was a time when you'd say work through things, do anything, but be conscious of it.
Well,
now you seem to be saying no. You know,
no, I'm not exactly
listen to that
saying
voice.
no, because if you say no at the wrong time, it's all a matter of timing. If you say no at the wrong time, the person spends all their time being preoccupied with that no.
Right.
See, the game is, at which point can you give something up and then take that energy and redirect it somewhere else? If you give it up, but you can't quite give it up, and you spend your time being preoccupied with having given it up, you are reinforcing the thing itself, the reality of that thing, like lust, for example. So if you walk down the street and you start to get horny, if you can at that moment offer that and put your mind into something that will open you and take that energy and work with it, great. If you can't do it and you just sit around being horny all day, forget it. That's not getting you any closer to God at all. The game is to get to God, not to be holy. You know, that's
right.
That's the difference. That there's a real thing to do here, and so that you get less caught in the rituals and forms than in the getting there, right? So that I have nothing wrong with telling somebody, you go ahead and jerk off for a while. That's all cool, because you've got all that stagnant energy. You can't use it anyway. You might as well get rid of it. You know, just don't create a lot of karma with it, right? Because they can't use that energy anyway. Later, they can take it and convert it and work with it.
When do you know that point?
Yeah,
when you know you can work with it.
Along that same line, what I wanted to, you were mentioning surrender and putting your trust in that, and you mentioned the game that's going on. There are a lot of people ostensibly playing that game of offering God, and I think it would be interesting if you could share how you surrendered, and at some point, and decided to give your trust to someone and say, okay, here it is, you know, I'm here, take over. Because there are a lot of people running around saying, here, follow me, you know, I've got the answers. And how does someone know?
It isn't a process where suddenly you know completely. In this particular scene, I've had in a way, the heavy burden, because I had to face all the doubts. After all, this woman that I'm studying with is the most unlikely figure to follow, right? But then so was Maharaji in India. But with Maharaji, I had Bhagwan Das, who I felt was spiritually connected, and I thought I trusted that, and I felt his power immediately. And it was a spiritual scene around him, but this wasn't even a spiritual scene particularly that heavily. And I faced hundreds of hours of doubt, you know. And then each time I would have to rerun my tapes of the whole thing that had happened and see the basic purity of it. And all I knew is every time I took a sounding, here was this being who was totally committed to my liberation. And I couldn't find an edge in the whole game. And the more I kept running my paranoia through, and she would taunt me about that paranoia, you know, she would taunt me about my doubt. the more, and she'd often demand I give up the doubt, which just increases the doubt, of course. You know, when somebody says, I'm your teacher, and I demand you give up any doubt of me as being the perfect teacher, right? That just works with your doubt. And then you've got to decide at that moment, look, am I going to go the trip or am I going to sit back, right? And all I knew was that this was the purest, most connected vibration that I could find around. And I wanted to get on bad enough to go, you know, and to eat my own doubts. And I think that the process of listening and trusting your own intuitive judgment, like I've seen a lot of people today who have been with one master or another here on the West Coast, and they say, well, there's something in me that keeps me from doing this. Should I treat that as a weakness in me, as they tell me it is, or shall I listen to it? And my whole statement always has been, listen to it. You may be wrong, but it's okay. Better to train yourself to tune to your own inner voice. You know, although at some point, your inner voice will tell you to do things that go contrary to every other part of your ego, and you'll be screaming. I remember being invited to go and sit at the Rohatsu Dai Sesshin at the with Sasaki Roshi down in Southern California, up in Mount Baldy. And it was a 9-day winter sesshin, and it was, I've talked about this one before.
Yeah, it's a great story.
And I went, and I didn't think I was professional. I'd never sat zazen, and they said, oh, you can do it. And I came in, it was miserable. It was cold, the food was lousy. They had me up at 2 in the morning and down at 10, and I got sick, and by the 3rd day I had a sore throat and a cold, and I thought maybe I could use an excuse and get out, and I got very paranoid, and how could I get rid of it? And at that point, though I was plotting how to escape, which I have done in this scene many times, and I did with Maharaji many times, I was plotting the way to escape. I knew in my inner being that this was really, really just what I needed. And I knew that I had to stay in it. And here was a situation where my inner voice was going contrary to every other part of my being, my health, my desires, my model of who I was, and all that. You know, so I trust that voice, that it's not necessarily choosing the easiest way. It is tuned to getting me home. That's it. It's tuned to getting me to God. There's no doubt about that now. And often it will take one part of my game and work on it and completely ignore another part. And I'll be very loose in one area of my life. And then, because it doesn't seem ready to play with just yet, you know, and then I'll go turn on it and clean it up. And I'm very fluid in the way I play with my own desire systems and so on. I mean, I played much more loosely than I play now before, you know. Like now I am brahmachari, and that's that. I mean, that one is over now.
But only when you could reach a point where you weren't giving it up, you were surrendering.
Yes, and not only that, but I was starting to get something in return that was a hell of a lot more than what I was giving up, which was made it a little nicer too.
Now, at some point, your inner voice or your conscience said, or your intellect, I don't know, it's hard to pin down, said, well, you don't keep pornographic pictures around if you're going to be brahmachari. You don't go to a porno flick, which at one point you were relating, you know, that you had been in a line. Yeah.
Well, you get to the point where you have screwed around for so many years. I mean, I'm 44 years old now. Either I'm going to spend my rest of my life being a spiritual dilettante and being sort of somebody who's always talking about the other guys who made it, or I'm going to do it. And at some point you say, look, here, I mean, that's really what she was confronting me with, what Maharaji was saying. Okay, let's go do it now. You know, you've talked about it so nice, and you got into the middle place, but why don't you go the whole trip right now? Okay? And once you make the decision to do that, then every act comes up, is it getting me there or isn't it? And there's no sense in it. There's no sense in feeding those other desire systems in yourself, because you're just making the damn job harder. And either don't go or go.
So this is where your discrimination tells you what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And just what is contributive and what is detrimental.
And it's got to be with every
And that's what you start listening to.
That's what you start listening to. And your criterion is very simple. He's going to get me there, isn't it?
Right.
You know? And that's who you're with and what you talk about and what you say. It was, yeah.
No outs.
Hmm?
You don't allow yourself any outs.
No. No, you don't. It was interesting because I had a number of visitors today who I could have talked about a lot of other things with. Politics, a lot of things. And it was interesting because all we talked about was God, because that's all that interests me. God and how to get to God. And
whereas at one point you would use those as devices
at one point,
to speak
I would
about
have,
God.
or I would have played whatever other games were available that our shared consciousness could play. I mean, like Jerry Rubin came by today. Well, Jerry and I have a long history together. I was speaking to Owsley, and Owsley and I have a long history together. Tonight, I had a very special visitor. Jerry Brown, the governor, came by to say hello, and he and I could talk about thousands of things, about prisons and politics. No, we talked about God all the time. We talked about states of samadhi and opening of the spirit, and we just had a fantastically beautiful hour together of just talking about God. And to me, that was, because that's all that I've got left. You know, I looked and I thought, here's the governor, what do I want? And I don't want anything. I mean, all I saw was that the only reason...
want?
Exactly. Well, I mean, our work is something different now. It's very beautiful together. Very informal and very loving and gentle.
God, that would look nice on the Sunday paper on the front page.
What?
Jerry Brown and Ram Dass talking about God. It'd be interesting.
On Sunday, yeah, in the religion section. Really.
Oh, on the front page.
I think it...
Well, I don't think I was betraying any confidence that we visited. That seemed like sure, it's not like
seems right somehow.
Jerry Ford's son having Bianca Jr. in the Lincoln room.
Gee, it feels good to be here.
And maybe Krishna Das can play something for us.
That would be nice.
Could you do that?
Krishna Das plays a dotara, huh?
What is a dotara? I see one string or two?
Two strings.
And it's
not an
a
official
gourd?
instrument.
It's not an
It's a
official
gourd,
instrument.
yeah, with a skin over the hole.
And a very long
Bridge
neck.
on the skin.
And I should tell our listeners that this is KQED FM in San Francisco. You're listening to New Dimensions. We're going to go past midnight tonight through the graciousness of KQED, and we thank them for that.
Ram Dass and Krishna Das transcend.
Just touch me one at a time to stop. Towards the end.
I don't know who to thank. Thank us.
It's nice stuff, isn't it? That's the love of the mother. That's the devotion of the mother.
By any other name. Just as sweet.
We have a phone call on line 1. If you'd like to take a phone call.
I think we should share this evening with listeners.
Hello?
Hello. Do I have to turn down the volume?
No.
No, you're okay.
All right. Yes, I would like to ask Ram Dass, how can I say? Well, first of all, I'm gay. Second of all, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 5 years. And I've been in to be here now since I came across it in 72. And in my halfway together searching, I have gone to a number of different disciplines, spiritual communes or whatever, the Krishna people in Boston. Sort of an AA thing called Eastridge, which is upstate New York, and the Ananda Meditation Retreat in Nevada City. Anyway, all of these people, one way or another, either are intolerant of homosexuality, gayness, or have sort of there's two other people here that are somewhat like that, you know. Of course, at the moment, I still have a lot of emotional investment in this area, and I was just wondering if Ram Dass could say anything about, one, a lineage that doesn't have any particular bias on sexual orientation. Yeah, I guess that's about it. I'm just wondering, quite frankly, at where I'm at right now, the only places that I've found total acceptance is in the gay aspects of Alcoholics Anonymous, which even AA, not gay, is totally embracing.
Yeah, I hear your
or
question.
the MCC Church. But other places, there's always, like I have a letter from Swami Kriyananda. I was very impressed with the Ananda Village and their meditation retreat. But his letter, you know, really just says, hey man, you know, normal sex is something you got to grow away from. Abnormal sex is, you know, doesn't even perpetuate people. I'm sorry my feelings may hurt you, but I have to let you know where I'm at. That's what his letter in general says. That's my question.
Right. I have it.
Now I should hang up, right?
You can.
You may.
It's okay. Earlier we were talking about a lot depends on what stage you're at in the journey and what kind of commitment you want to make. The recognition that you are a being who has incarnated into a body and into a psychological situation, and that your soul, or that part of you, which is what awakens, or what you recognize yourself to be as a result of your spiritual work, is actually neither male nor female, and really hasn't much to do with the whole drama of our psychological identities. Now, in general, as you proceed with this work, you begin to look back on your life and see a lot of things that seemed like terrible liabilities or burdens as things that were part of your purification, or ways in which you learn compassion, which you needed to develop in this lifetime. And you ultimately recognize the exquisiteness of the design of your own life. And from that point of view, you're not judging any particular set of acts in terms of good and evil. You're judging them only in terms of how consciously you were able to utilize those acts in order to awaken through them. Now, in general, as you proceed with this work, you begin to look back on your life and see a lot of things that seemed like terrible liabilities or burdens as things that were part of your purification, or ways in which you learn compassion, which you needed to develop in this lifetime. And you ultimately recognize the exquisiteness of the design of your own life. And from that point of view, you're not judging any particular set of acts in terms of good and evil. You're judging them only in terms of how consciously you were able to utilize those acts in order to awaken through them. That includes alcoholism and any kind of sexual predilection you might have. Now, I don't think that anything that I'm connected with has any attitudes at all about what kind of sex an individual is into. but understanding in a way, not the way Kriyananda said it, but close to it, that ultimately all of that energy will be used to go to God, because the whole attraction to another person's body, the whole experience of that kind of, quote, lust, which is an attraction to an object, is a relationship level that ultimately moves you away from being a fully conscious being. And ultimately, it would fall away. I think it's better to think of it as something that will fall away rather than something that one should impose restrictions, especially out of any moral code, because I don't think it's a moral issue, actually, at all. And at least not from a spiritual point of view, I don't think it is. I think from a spiritual awakening point of view, the game is how much do you want God, and to preoccupy yourself with getting to God, and treat your homosexuality, your alcoholism, your age, your economics, all of it as support systems that are either getting you there or not getting you there. And the ones that aren't, you start to shape them up, and the ones that are, you hold on to. It's as simple as that. And in other words, you shift your focus about who you are, so that instead of being busy being I'm a homosexual, or I'm a professor, or I'm a this, or I'm a woman, or I'm a man, I'm a being going to God. And these are all the things that I'm working with in this lifetime. And if I work with intolerance, you can see that intolerance as a terrible drag, or you can see it as a fire of purification. Because if somebody's intolerant to you about some part of your social behavior, and you respond to that with compassion and love, they're the ones that are stuck with the karma from their lack of compassion, not you. If you buy into it, that's your problem. So it becomes, you end up thanking all these ashrams for laying a trip on you, because it's getting you through to clean up your own game, your own attitudes about it. I think that deals with that gentleman's question.
Beautifully.
We have some more.
Sure do.
We sure do.
Hello.
Hello. I have two quick questions. Actually, they're not quick. The first one is, how do you remember to remember? And the second one is, what does Ram Dass think about giving up the want or the desire of getting there? That is, to God, getting to God. Isn't that a desire too?
Right. Hi. Okay, I'll answer.
He's here. You're talking directly to him.
How do you remember to remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at first, you often use methods, almost what would seem like artificial techniques, like, for example, mantra or japa beads or things like that. And you'll be doing the mantra and you'll lose it and then it'll come back again.
Yeah, but what do you do when you know those just don't work anymore? I mean, they're external.
Well,
they're outside.
Yeah. One of the things I've done with my students is I've had them define the major activities that they do each day as an exercise, and then attend to each activity and figure out the way in which that activity could be used to awaken them, like working in a subway or something like that. And they actually program their days as vehicles for awakening through their regular experiences. And what happens if you follow the path of the dance is that you keep forgetting and you keep remembering
that you're forgetting.
That you're remembering that you're forgetting, and that remembering, you keep forgetting as often as you ever forgot, but you keep remembering sooner and sooner and sooner, because you get to the point, which is the way it happened with me anyway, where the forgetting brings you into a different vibrational space. And that heaviness awakens you. It's like suddenly it's like you've been walking in a sunny day and suddenly you're in the fog. And that fog makes you realize the sun just went out. You're not seeing the sun anymore. And I find that, like, I'll be going along and I will start the day in a certain space, and then I'll go out and I'll start to pick up stuff from other people. And I'll start to get heavier and heavier. Now, sometimes it's so subtle that I don't notice the forgetting process. It's not some big gross thing like getting angry at somebody. It's just subtle stuff. And then I will begin to notice that I'm feeling fatigue or I'm feeling something, and that will awaken me, because I know that in another state, none of that would be pulling on me. And then what I do is I usually go into a men's room and I sit down in the can and I just start to do a breath that clears me out. It just clears out all the sludge that I've collected. A very simple breath that just starts to awaken me a little bit. Actually, what I'm saying to you is that this is forcing you to examine how much you want to get done. Because in part what you're doing is you're trying to convince yourself you want to get rid of things that you apparently still don't want to get rid of.
No, but what about impatience? I guess that's my second question.
Consume it.
The incredible impatience of wanting to...
Impatience isn't going to get you there any faster.
I know.
Well, then it's going to have to be something... Everything that's not going to get you to God, you got to give up. Okay? You don't have to give it up. You got to give up the attachment to it. Now, the last one, the desire for God, that one you hold on until the end. That's the one that is the final. That's the one that Ramana Maharshi describes as the stick you use to stir the funeral pyre, and that's the one you finally throw onto the fire right at the very end.
Uh-huh.
And you hold on to that, and you use that as a cudgel to get rid of all the others. So that constantly...
And the habit of being virtuous and holy, does that go before the stick?
Oh, it sure does. Sure does. That's one of the early ones to go. Mm-hmm. That one is practically like lust.
Yeah.
That's no. That's got to go too. That's got to go. You just got to get, because righteousness really doesn't get you to truth. Truth gets you to righteousness, but righteousness doesn't get you to truth. Unfortunately.
The phony holies.
The phony holies are as bad as the phony unholies.
Yeah, getting their spiritual cards punched.
But what you're doing is you're bugged because you're not totally straight with yourself that you don't really want to get there as badly as you'd like to think you'd like to get there. Because otherwise you wouldn't forget so much. You'd be just working harder most of the time. You'd be filling your mind more with stuff. There wouldn't be those pulls. What's pulling you? What's getting you to forget in the first place? That's it. See? Whatever it is that gets you to forget, examine it. At the end of each day, keep a diary of everything that got you to forget. And then see how much it is you want those things, and do you want to hold on to them or not? Maybe you do at this point.
I wonder if here there isn't a difference between impatience and anxiety.
Yeah, I think that once you have the faith that you are going to make it through, that you're doing fine, you're going to get there, then you start to get a patience with it. I mean, the first time you hit a plateau, that experience is a plateau, and you figure, well, I've blown it, nothing more is happening, I'm getting stagnant. Then later you see that that stagnation was only an illusion and there was actually a process going on. After you've been through that a few times, the next time you get to a plateau, you say, another one of these ones, and you get to be very blasé about the process because you know it's always working, because you trust your motive that you really want to get done.
I keep getting an image of climbing a mountain and chipping footholds.
Exactly. But there's another image of the mountain, is you climb a mountain and you come to these way stations, and they're groovy. They got restaurants and beautiful views. And why go on? It's really nice there. And you've still been a mountain climber. You did a little mountain climbing. And then you notice that the people who go to the next level have boots and you had sneakers, and you don't think you're ready, so maybe next year, and then you come with the boots, you go to the next level. And that's a nice social scene at that way station. Then there's just a very rough path going on beyond that, and it's cold and dark immediately. It goes around the dark side of the mountain, and who wants to do that? Yeah, and, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for calling.
Good night.
Night. Our phone number here, in case you didn't get it, is 864-2051.
They must have. They're all busy.
Yeah. They snuck through and looked in the telephone directory, I think. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, I was wondering if anyone could tell me where I could procure the Ram Dass lecture tapes at all.
Yeah, you can get them from the Hanuman Foundation.
How is that spelled?
Hanuman.
Okay.
Hanuman Foundation. 276 Riverside Drive, New York, 10025.
Okay. Thank you much.
You're welcome.
It just
Who
seemed
paid
funny,
him, do you
someone
think?
asking for tapes. Hello.
Hello.
You're here.
Yes.
Is the radio too loud?
No, it's all right.
It may be. You might try and turning it down.
Okay. Sounds like an echo chamber.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback.
I guess that was it.
I wanted to turn it up a little bit. Huh? Yeah, that's good. Right there. I wanted to thank Krishna Das for what was said, and thank Ram Dass for the trucking mantra, and the only dance there is. And I had a question that has been coming up. I've been doing the faces thing a lot, the emerging, dissolving faces. And I get a sense of the more intense faces, or the ones that tend to repeat with a certain individual, as coming from a relationship experienced in a previous materialization. And there seems to be a lot of validation in what happens going into it with that idea in mind. And I wonder if that's something that you could comment on from your own experience.
Okay. What he's talking about, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, is a technique in which you look into another person's eyes and focus there, and then the faces start to change. I would suggest that if in truth you want to get on with it, you don't get too preoccupied with the content of what you see or an analysis of why that content exists. The process is one of, as it's said in the, I think, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, facing the 10,000 beautiful and 10,000 frightful visions. And so you just notice them, and you notice your reactions to them, whether it's that of passion, arousal, or boredom, or hatred, or fear, or whatever you do, and then you offer that one up, or consume it, and then get on with it, and then allow the face to change again. The minute you get into analysis of why the faces are the way they are, you're in a way perpetuating an identity of yourself, whether it be this plane or previous incarnations or all. That's all just sort of stuff in a way, and it's better not to preoccupy yourself too intensely with that stuff. It's the same with dream analysis.
Isn't that information like an incredibly valuable or full memory, in a sense, of the experiences, which, if it can be brought into consciousness in the awake state, can just eliminate a hell of a lot of experiential necessities, in doing it this time.
Not necessarily, because if you have done it in the past, whether you're conscious of it or not, you'll probably won't have a very intense desire to have to repeat it anyway.
So the thing is just to keep letting go of it.
I think it's a better strategy to not make a big deal out of the stuff, because there is such richness. There is a never-ending supply of the experiences you've had in the thousands and thousands of incarnations you've had. And once you start this, it's a never-ending process of collecting information about yourself.
Is there some essential personality that predominates, literally predominates,
the way to
throughout all civilizations? And
there may
behind this personality.
There may be that, and you may feel much drawn to a Shiva lineage, or a Vishnu lineage, or a Buddha lineage, or however you want to talk about these, Zeus lineage, or something like that, and see these patterns reoccurring over incarnations. But in general, let that all happen serendipitously rather than focusing on it. Let it just sort of come up and force itself upon your attention, because if it is necessary for your dharma that you know who you were at any point, you'll damn well know without you having to analyze it to figure it out.
When you're ready for the name, you get the information.
You'll get it. You'll really get it. Okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Hello.
Hi. I was interested in talking to Ramdas about language and the problem that you run into when you talk about God. That it can have a whole spectrum of meaning as to what God really means, and some people might not believe in God, and yet they really do at some level. And at another level, people can be just attached to the idea of believing in God, and you can get fooled by just the very nature of your language.
Absolutely.
And
right on. Only you know, and only you can keep purifying it in the sense of making it real again. But from a functional point of view, the relation to, quote, God as a concept, and it is a concept, because what God is not conceptual.
That's really what the nature of God as a concept, like...
yeah, it's a concept, okay. But I'm trying to explain to you something. Would you wait a second?
Alan Watts has sometimes frequently kind of, in a sense a joke, but also extremely realistically said that, does a dog have Buddha nature? Well, of course, the answer is yes, a dog does have Buddha nature, because he has his own nature. And he doesn't even have a concept of God at all, in the sense that we are preoccupied with it. And almost like it seems to me that God is...
Dogs don't get enlightened.
With our estrangement.
Dogs don't get enlightened.
Dogs don't get enlightened?
No, not as dogs they don't. I'm sorry. But look, rather than go on and on, let me just explain that the reason that I'm involved, not a reason, my relationship to God is a purely one that I work with in my heart. It's not one that I work with my reason. And I don't really give a damn what I even mean by it. All I know is it's something to which my heart opens. And recently I had an interview with a fellow who has been trained as a Buddhist and found the word God very reprehensible. And so I looked for a word in his universe that would be workable, and the word was Dharma, and all I had him saying was, I love you, Dharma. Oh, Dharma, I love you. Oh, I love you, Dharma. And that was serving that process. He was a little rusty for a while, but I don't give a damn what word is used. And I know it has excess meaning, but I play with that excess meaning and that anger and that irritation to show people how they cling to their own models about concepts. Because what I'm interested in, and what I say specifically, is what God is not a concept anyway. It's just a label. Thank you.
Okay.
Isn't it? It's sort of like talking about it intellectually and then talking about it experientially. You don't have to talk about it if you experience it.
Exactly. And you're always just pointing. It's denoting something that isn't labelable. And but for people who have related to those spaces in which you experience the presence of God, it's a very real experience. And it's the same predicament that for somebody that's looking at it from outside, they get caught in linguistic delicacies and intellectual delights, but that isn't the same thing as the experience of God, which you could experience as an orgasmic relation with the fullness of the universe. I mean, there are a lot of little ways you can talk about or play. You want to say anything about that?
Hello.
Hello. I'm looking for an opinion more than anything else concerning the use of proper use or improper use of the Book of Changes. I wonder if you'd have an opinion about that. I feel, for instance, in my own life that I am involved with a great deal of time in looking just within this one realm, and that it doesn't allow for an entirety. It is very clearly Taoistic, but I wonder if this could sound silly, but I wonder if I should be more modern and ignore these things, You know what I'm talking about?
Just happens we're sitting here with the I Ching. That far out. It says, the Master said, the changes, what do? The changes disclose things, complete affairs, and encompass all ways on earth. This and nothing else. For this reason, the holy sages use them to penetrate all wills on earth and to determine all fields of action on earth and to settle all doubts on earth. Now, you opened that randomly?
Yeah,
pretty impressive.
This has been working.
That it works.
The I Ching always works. Regularly.
But it is all about earth. And the laws of the universe exist on every plane, and you can study them in terms of the physical plane, and the I Ching will help you see the law in everything, or the flow in everything. And in that way, it'll help you get it together on this plane of existence. Your identities on other planes are not necessarily facilitated by this method. It's not the optimum method for exploring other planes of your own identity. What its beauty is in loosening the hold of any models or molds you have to any specific take of reality, and keeps giving you new perspectives. And the deeper you grow with any holy book, the more you awaken, the more you'll find in the book. You may have used the book to the point now where it's a limiting condition for you, because the Taoist philosophy may not be your lineage. It may not be the way that can take you all the way through. And so you may feel, well, in this way my mind is still being played with too much, and I have to quiet my mind more. And then you'll be drawn to, say, Vipassana meditation or something like that.
Beg your pardon?
You'll be drawn to, say, Theravadan Buddhist meditation, or just following the breath, or something like that. And every time you have a question, like the way I live is, when I have a question now, I conclude that I'm apparently not in the right space, because if I were, I'd know the answer. So when I have a question, I just start to empty my mind. And I just go into another place where the answer is. So I just keep emptying. If I have a question, I know I must not be in the right space to have the answer, because when I'm really in the flow, there are no questions and there are no answers. There's just it all opening before me, like you're driving down a highway and the trees are just coming by you in this way. And that's what life becomes. It's just a process of playing, of opening to. And the whole intellective choice business becomes quite trivial.
Well, at the point when you're driving, when I'm experiencing what you're talking about, when you're driving down the highway, that's all right. That experience is full, but it's the points, I feel like there are points in between driving down the highways or getting to the highway, which is that once I'm on the highway, it's all right. But if there's...
Your model, though, of those places as quote in-between places, that's a statement created by your mind, because actually every moment is part of the highway. So what you're doing is you're defining one moment as different from another moment. That's something your mind is doing. And at that moment, if you see that working, if you start to let go of the mind model you have, you're right back in the flow again. Because I can sit in a situation that, quote, could be, quote, called boring, and I'm waiting for the action to begin again. And then I am fascinated because at that moment, the minute I feel one of those states, I just empty, and then suddenly the boredom is as much part of the process of my life as anything else. And I'm no longer running and grabbing and pushing and pulling, and it's not this or that, or here or there. Can you hear what I'm trying to suggest?
I believe so.
Right. Nice to talk to you. Nice beings calling up, I really like their vibration.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I had a question. You had mentioned several times before something about grace as a product of suffering.
Yeah.
And I had two questions on that. First of all, I'm not quite clear what you mean by grace, how you define it. And secondly, would that apply to some kind of a suffering that a person had voluntarily got into, like an athlete's training or something like that?
let's see, what I said was suffering is grace, meaning that suffering is a vehicle for awakening. Let me now, in the light of more recent training on my part, to redefine grace a little bit. When you get to the point of the initial awakening, where you're starting to reach for a more profound identity, or reach for God or a higher state of consciousness, or freedom or liberation, whatever you want to call it, at that point, that reaching in purity brings down upon you grace. Now, one way you could see the grace is in the sense of allies or guides or guardian angels or gurus, or however you want to think of that, on one plane or another. This is all grace. These are beings who are there to help you on your way once you want to go the journey. Only if you want to go the journey. If you don't, they leave you alone. Now, when you bring it down to daily experiences, you can take suffering and see that once you are awakening, you take every experience in your life and see it as a vehicle for awakening. And then it turns out that the vehicles that are pleasant tend to keep you in the models, while the vehicles that are unpleasant tend to force you to awaken more. And in that sense, suffering becomes grace. That is, it forces the awakening more than pleasure forces awakening. So you could, if you're doing it within this new definition of grace, you would say that you have asked to be liberated, and the teachings impose these sufferings on you as the fire to purify you, to awaken you. And these sufferings can be I think that anything that you go through that involves suffering, whether you have imposed it through like athletic training or something like that, would certainly qualify, because the suffering is quite independent of how you got into it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That was interesting. I learn a lot by answering questions, because I never know I know any of that stuff. I don't really care either, but... Hi.
Hello. Ramdas?
Yeah.
You getting some feedback?
Some feedback? No, it's cool.
Oh, okay. My girlfriend and I are not really doing anything right now, except realizing that going to God is the only thing to do. Yet we feel sort of directionless. So what can we do? Is it possible to become your students and keep a very open relationship? Or are all students required to cut loose of such goings on? Hello, Ramdas?
Yeah.
You getting some feedback?
Some feedback? No, it's cool.
Oh, okay. My girlfriend and I are not really doing anything right now, except realizing that going to God is the only thing to do. Yet we feel sort of directionless. So what can we do? Is it possible to become your students and keep a very open relationship? Or are all students required to cut loose of such goings on?
If you wish to go on in the journey of going to God, the best strategy is to start to create a space in your life which you fill with consciousness about this journey. And if, for example, at some time in the day, you and your girlfriends, lady friends, were to share, say, the reading of the Gospel of Ramakrishna, and then share a contemplation meditation, contemplate on the different qualities of realization together, like on compassion one day, on love on another, and so on. And then start to build into your life just these little reminders and ways of becoming a little more conscious. chant or sing together in the evening or do some things like that, that will start to put into perspective the importance of all of the rest of your activities that are at the moment very real and solid for you. Because you'll start to have experiences in your meditations that will change the need or the desire for the kinds of fulfillments you've been getting through food or sex or socializing or dope or whatever it is you've been doing. And rather than this kind of violent, no, it's not good, stop it, I think that's a very unrealistic strategy. I think a much more optimum strategy is just start to fill your life with where it is you're going to. If you're truly saying, I want it, then start to create spaces for it in your life and let the rest of the stuff take its course as it will for the time being anyway. Is that fair enough?
We're sort of starting to, like I said, we're just sort of traveling. We're here visiting for a little while. And there's really nothing pulling on us, and we're not doing any dope, and like we're just realizing we're not really doing much in the way of sex either. And still sort of, beginning to see God and everything and every experience and everything that's happening, yet there's just still not a sort of thing that's cementing it together.
Yeah. Well, in the space you're in,
I mean, we're ready. We're ready, but there's just not that thing happening.
Well, see, that's a kind of a paradox, because if you are ready, it starts to happen. There isn't any, the idea of wanting somebody else to make it happen for you is reflecting the fact that you aren't really wanting it fully to happen yet, or you'd create a space in which it would happen. I mean, even the fact that you're moving around, if you want, like I'll go off and take my Volkswagen camper out to the desert for 6 weeks, and in those 6 weeks I'll create a space where I can go into all kinds of inner stuff, You can just go into a closet and close the door and you'll confront more stuff than you would in 100 years of sort of floating around looking for teachers. I think that you have to, first of all, be brutally honest with yourself about your own motivations, because somebody that's waiting to have it done to them is, in a sense, kidding themselves a little bit. Because I think the first act, the first effort has to be your effort. And I don't think it's enough just to go and hand yourself over to somebody. I think it's an effort of attempting to change the perceptual vantage point of your life a little bit. And that's the hardest one, because your life is nice, and we've all learned how to make nice lives or easy lives or comfortable lives. Am I dealing with your question at all?
Yeah, in truth, our life is really, it's not nice and it's not easy. We are really in this space where, we trust the things that have come out through reading The Only Dance There Is and Be Here Now and listening to some of your tapes and stuff. And like a lot of other people who are doing their things, it feels good and we learn and stuff. And it's just like we just don't go into anything full blown. I mean, there's just like always a pull not to, but yet with the things that you are putting out, we don't hold back. Mm-hmm. Yet there's just something that we're not connecting on.
I understand. So, what is it you want, you think?
What
are you asking for, do you think?
What are we asking for?
Yeah.
To work with you.
That's what I thought you were asking for. Why don't you drop me a note and remind me of this conversation?
Okay.
And we'll see what happens.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping we would come to that. Hello.
Hello, Baba G.
Yeah.
How does one overcome the negativity of the people around him when one is full of energy and wants to radiate love and joy and awareness, but when he approaches a being and they will not look him in the face or he smiles at them, they think he has some ulterior motive. They say this guy wants to do something to me, or better watch him.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome these difficulties? Because after a while, you become negative because they're negative towards you.
Yeah, I hear your predicament exactly. One of the things you learn along the way in this dance is that it really isn't possible to lay a trip on another being. I mean, you can do it, but there are going to be incredible repercussions, as you're finding out, or feedback or flack from it. And you learn to become what you are and let that go forth. It's like throwing bread upon the waters. And if somebody doesn't respond to it, you see it with compassion as their predicament. And whether you buy it back or not, that's your work on yourself.
Oh.
See, like, you're saying, I'll give you a gift if you give me a gift back. And your game now is to just become the gift of love and light and peace and joy and just be it. Whoever dances with it was ready to dance with it. Whoever doesn't, you have compassion for them and you love them. Because imagine how horrible it is to be in their world where they can't experience the joy from another human being or the love that's coming from another human being. And that brings out your compassion, and all you can do is love them more. But that's their predicament, and you don't have to change anybody, because in fact you really can't. You can merely be a statement of it. You become like a beautiful shade tree that anybody that is ready can come under and get shade from. But if they're not, you don't go out with tentacles and grab them and pull them under the shade tree. So that you create an environment everywhere you go where anybody that's ready to become love, light, and joy, immediately when they come into your vibrational space, they get it. But at the same moment, if they're not ready, you bless them and love them and have compassion towards them.
Well, this is hard to uphold. Like sometimes, I figured I should go out there incognito, because if I try, I know it's going to have some, adverse effects on me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I try to absorb, but I get sick.
You get sick?
Yeah, if I try.
Yeah, well, that's because, see, you don't know how to get rid of the stuff when you get it. There's a whole process of clearing yourself. Because I know, see, it's very delicate to be a really open human being and pick up all this stuff that comes from the environment and not get caught with it. It's one thing if there are different ways in which you pick up stuff. Sometimes you say to somebody, look, if you've got a heavy thing like anger or something, give it to me, I'll take it. Like I say to a lot of people, just say, here, Ramdas, you take it, and then give it up to me, and I will take it. And they say, won't you get stuck with it? And I'll say, no, because you gave it up. I didn't take it from you. If I take it from you, I get stuck with it. If you give it to me, it goes right through me and goes right up to God. I don't get stuck with it at all. Now, I don't take stuff from people, so I don't get stuck with it. But subtly, you do sometimes when you're walking down the street. You look at somebody and you feel pity. You've picked up that stuff from them. Any number of emotions you pick up.
Right.
And what you've got to learn is how to do breathing to clear and to offer up this stuff. And if you just start to take in deep breaths, and with each deep breath just say, here, take this heaviness, here, take this pain, this anger, take whatever it is, and just keep offering it to Kali or to me or to God or to Christ or to whoever it is you feel tuned to, then you're offering the stuff up that you've collected and you're getting rid of it. Because you're saying, look, it's not getting me to God, I want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay? No matter where it came from.
The trick is to realize you don't want it. When you realize that you don't want it yourself, then it goes out of you very quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of times we pick stuff up, and we have a subtle, we dig taking stuff from people. And in that way we want it. So you have to realize you don't want it, and you let it go.
I have to realize that I don't want it.
Yeah, that you just want to let it go.
And the technique is to take deep breaths.
Take deep breaths, and with each out-breath, give it up. And then consciously say, here, Christ, you take it, or whoever you're offering it to. Here, you take it.
Well, is there a method of purifying it, like doing the meditation, like sending it to the plane of fire and trying to purify it there?
Well, the other way is to take that energy, if you can do it, and you breathe in through your heart, take all that junk, and take it up through your head and go out the top of your head and go up to God on that energy. In other words, you take the energy and you use it to go up on. See, that's when you...
to go up on?
Yeah, you can take the energy and convert it and use it to go up on. See, that's what I do. I feed on a lot of negative energy. Because ultimately, you don't get caught in the content. You just get the energy out of it. Like if somebody says, "You son of a," and they're screaming at you, that's just pure energy coming at you. If you get caught in the content of it, that's your hang-up. But if you just take the energy and go right up on it, you can use it just the way it is.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for calling.
Go ahead.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Well, it's best, like he mentioned something about taking up to the plane of fire.
Yeah.
And that's tricky stuff.
Talk about it.
Well, it's tricky stuff going into other planes before you know yourself too well.
Because you intensify the negative energy.
Yeah, you may be doing that.
Yeah.
And instead of really getting rid of it and purifying it, you're blowing up stuff in yourself that you're not quite aware of by going up into another plane with a load, with a lot of baggage.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably for him it would be better to just breathe it out.
Let it go, yeah.
Yeah.
Breathe it out.
We have maybe time for one more call.
Okay.
The station goes off the air at 1. Maybe next time you're here, we'll have our own radio station and we can go on.
That happens with us all the time. No matter how many hours we have, it's always the same
We did,
predicament.
6.5 hours once?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Ramdas.
Yes.
I have been much influenced by Jane Roberts' books, the Seth books. And I really do believe now, and the shoots are coming up from that seed, that I am the creator of all my reality. And that what you call coming to God is letting my higher self fuse with the lower self and letting it do the creating. And I'm wondering whether having to suffer, going through suffering and pain in order to grow isn't a core belief that we have programmed ourselves into, and that when we can let that go, we can open ourselves up to grace, and that it isn't a necessary a prerequisite to coming to God.
It is not a necessary prerequisite to coming to God. That is true. Suffering is not a necessary prerequisite. It's a very speedy vehicle, but it's not a necessary prerequisite. That's true. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there tickets still available for tomorrow at Pauley?
As far as I know, there are a few left, yeah. I don't really...
What time is that happening tomorrow?
It happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
At Pauley Ballroom?
Pauley Ballroom, and then Monday night is at Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz
Civic Auditorium.
Civic Auditorium. I think that may be nearly sold out, because that's a...
I heard that it was.
Yeah, that's a heavy scene down there.
Yeah.
It's one of my old stomping grounds. I like that.
Got a lot of good folks up in the hills there.
Maybe you could give that address for tapes from the Hanuman Foundation again.
Sure, Hanuman Foundation.
Tape library,
276 Riverside Drive, New York 10025. And that's also where you could write if you would like, if you have any friends that are in prison that would like to receive our journal called Inside Out, which is specifically for beings who are in prison to help them use their time in prison to get on with their spiritual work. And we publish it and give it away. So if you'd like a copy for somebody, let us know. We'd like to send it to them.
You've given me the opportunity to pass on a message from Dana from the Prison Ashram Project here. They're in need of at least 3 people to answer correspondence each week, or one person that can spend 3 days answering correspondence with prisoners. And if you'd like to volunteer for that particular effort, you can contact Dana at 1080, that's Box 1080, San Rafael 94902. And the telephone number, if you'd like to call, is 457-2990. If you have some time and would like to correspond with prisoners who have been writing to the Prison Ashram Project here. That's the message, the immediate need.
What's happening next week on New Dimensions, Will?
Well, we're having a program on Sufism, some tapes by Murshid Samuel L. Lewis on the Kabbalah.
There are 2 beautiful new books out of his.
They just keep coming.
Yeah.
And they're still into his correspondence.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of things.
I was just reading one today. A very, very high book.
Great man. And we'll try and cover some other aspects of Sufism as well, from slightly different viewpoints.
And we'll be having an interview with Gay Luce and Eric Pepper, talking about the work of Wolfgang Luthi, yes, and autogenic training.
And an interview with Dr. Kaushik?
Yes.
My goodness.
It's going to be a full week. They keep filling up. Such good things. Like being able to have you with us.
It's fun to share space so gently, isn't it? No? I really, I get very much bliss just from the connection with all the beings who are listening. You know, it's like a network of...
we do every week.
Yeah, I can see why you do. It's very far out because I can feel audiences now on the radio, you know? I do different kinds of shows and the vibrations are entirely different.
Isn't our family nice?
Yeah, it is nice. Yeah.
Maybe we should mention the tapes, Michael, are available of other shows.
Yes, tapes of New Dimensions programs are available. Shuffle through quickly here. Cassette tapes are available. The prices are $5 per hour or $15 for a full 4-hour program, plus 50 cents postage and handling, and California sales tax of 6%. Proceeds from the tape sales go towards covering expenses of producing New Dimensions radio programs. And we urge you to start a tape library. You're free to copy the tapes if you like. The only thing we ask is that you don't try and sell them again. But you can copy them to your heart's delight. So buy one and make 10 copies for your friends. If you'd like to order tapes or to get a list of those tapes available, you can write to New Dimensions Tapes at 519 Montgomery Street, San Francisco, 94111. And if you just want to write to us, you can do that too at New Dimensions, 519 Montgomery Street, San Francisco, 94111.
Do you play some of these tapes on the radio? Ever? I mean, do you
We
play
just
them again?
create them.
You just create them? Right. All your stuff is live?
Okay. Very rarely is anything replayed. Once in a while when we have to take a vacation.
Right, okay.
It's the hardest thing to do of all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a full evening.
And Krishna Das, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
And this is Michael Toms.
And Will Noffke.
Saying good evening for the entire New Dimensions radio family. And thanks for sharing this evening with us. We'll talk to you next week.